So before I start the video, I gotta ask you, how much of Judy Alvarez's tattoos do you think actually have like secret meaning? How many of her tattoos do you think are actually meaningless? Well, that's kind of the question I asked myself when I went into this. Now, I've been looking up her tattoos and just kind of diving into different aspects of her character for a few weeks now because I do find her to be incredibly interesting. And I mean, that is pretty much the main reason I've been enjoying Cyberpunk, is because I find a lot of the character development to be very well done. But Judy is by far the best done character in the game, at least in my honest opinion. And this is because she seems to have the most development, into her actual personality, into her world itself. She's got her apartment, which is just filled with all sorts of little tidbits of information about her life and her past. She's got her, her story, everything that basically encompasses her, all of her relationships, all of her history, kind of just bottled up into these like 5 or 6 missions. And then, of course, she's got her tattoos, and her tattoos definitely follow along with all of her story, all of her, little hidden things in her apartment. And it really seems like everything that you would want to know about her is kind of displayed somewhere for you to find. Now, not everything. There's still some stuff I would like to know more on, but it's very interesting to dive into this stuff nonetheless. Now, for her tattoos, there's kind of 4 different categories I would put them in. The first category would be kind of like her desire tattoos. When somebody gets a tattoo, obviously, they might have a hidden meaning for it, or they might have some sort of symbolism there. But sometimes people just get tattoos because they like tattoos. And with these tattoos, I would kind of put the category of her water tattoos, her sea animals, into this category. Because we see a lot of her tattoos, like the seahorses, the dolphin, the shark, they don't really have a direct placeable, I guess, Easter egg to them. There's no real direct information right to them. It's a lot like her apartment, and she kind of uses her body as just another way of expressing this affinity for water, right? Then, of course, we've got her life-driven tattoos. These are tattoos that I think kind of encapsulate who she is and what she's been doing in this world. These tattoos seem to be more of a direct reflection on her and just the events that have happened to her, which is why I actually kind of like these tattoos the most, because these tattoos feel like something a real person would get. A lot of the tattoos, besides these ones, kind of obviously feel like they were put in there by developers, right? That's something that the developers put in there for you to look at and for her to look nice. These life-driven tattoos, like the fire truck or the Mox tattoos, symbolize stuff that she personally has done, or something that has affected her personally, and they kind of make sense that she would get a tattoo based around those things. The third category is going to be developer tattoos. Now, these are the tattoos that I think they put in there that kind of tie her character in with different parts of the game. These are the kind of things that would, tie in the different like song lyrics on her tattoos. And they also tie in some of the Easter eggs, something that has a direct reflection towards her character, but they're not something that's really, taken to heart by her, right? I mean, they kind of reflect different meanings that the developers have put in there, but they don't really seem like they're selected personally by her, if you understand what I'm saying. And the fourth category is going to be filler, unconfirmed, and kind of unknown. These are the different tattoos that they might have some sort of meaning, they might have some sort of like symbolism, but overall, there's nothing in the game, there's nothing that really, stands out based on her story, based on anything that she says or does, at least as of yet. Maybe some of these things are like cut content, maybe some of these are DLC content in the future. I don't know. But as of right now, the stuff that I found, the stuff that I've, looked up, I can't really pinpoint anything specifically indicating what these mean. And for example, what I mean is like the webs that she has, the web tattoos, the rings, the different lace tattoos, like the bars that she has on her upper wrist, the garter tattoo that she has on her leg. Some of these tattoos, they don't really have direct meaning, at least nothing that I can really pinpoint. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe there is some sort of hidden thing that the developers intended for it, but I can't really find any super good explanations that just kind of like just fit the mold perfectly for me to say this is what it means. And looking at these tattoos, we actually kind of come at a crossroads, I guess you could say, and that's whether they were put in before or after a certain point. I say this because if you actually look at her hands and her ankles during the Pyramid Song mission, when she is in her wetsuit, She doesn't have any tattoos on her hands or her ankles. And obviously, during character development, during her creation, they probably started with a base character. So they made one character. They put the tattoos that were, meaningful on her. They put the tattoos that probably had references on her. And then they put the clothing that she is associated with. When you look at her in the wetsuit, you can see the neck tattoo that she has for the Mox. But you don't see any of the other ones. Now, this to me says that, the developers had their original ideas, they had their stuff that they had set in stone, and things that actually had meaning or were driven by story were already on her. But then after they kind of went back and they're like, well, let's just add some more flair to her, let's just make it a little bit more interesting, I feel like they put a lot of these, like spider webs, the I don't like you tattoos, the rings, those things as kind of just additional stuff just to put on her. And because of this, I kind of feel that some of the tattoos don't necessarily reflect anything other than the developer's desire to kind of just have some sort of tie-in or just some additional pieces of, flair on her. They don't really mean anything in the grand scheme of character design. Now, what this leaves us with is what I think are her most interesting tattoos. Those include the Mox tattoo written out on her arm. That includes the M tattoo on her neck, the 13 tattoo on her shoulder, the Mox skull. Obviously, that's just right next to the Ghost in the Shell tattoo. She's also got the fire truck, and then, we see the angel on the back of her neck. And then finally, we have the quotes and the song lyrics. That's From the Sea, the Fear and Doubt, and the underwater one. Now, these ones are the ones that I actually think are really tied to her character. These are the original tattoos that I believe really define her personality. Now, I've seen a lot of talk about the M tattoo and the 13 tattoo. Obviously, those are some of the tattoos that we first see from, just the different trailers and stuff that they released of the game. But one of the key features that is seemingly missed with her neck tattoo, the M tattoo, is the fact that it does have different symbols next to it. Now, the clearest ones are the V and the 13 on either side of it. Now, when you actually look at that, you might not really think anything of it. But V, is not just a tie into the actual character in the game. It is a Roman numeral for 5. So we see 513. And, the only reference that I can find to M513 is Matthew 5:13. And this seems to fit what it means, because if you actually look at, the passage here, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its flavor, with what will it be salted? Obviously, it's a biblical reference, but it ties into her theme overall because, where does salt come from? Generally regarded as coming from the sea. So that's kind of an interesting, reference there. But the thing gets a little bit confusing, because if you actually pay attention to some of the Mox storyline, some of that stuff, if you actually go in, to Liz's bar and learn about a little bit of that history, we do come to understand that it wasn't always M. The original logo was actually an L. Now, we can kind of try to work backwards, or maybe we have to work forwards. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe the developers had the idea of M, and then they kind of just added the L thing as kind of just like a little bit of background without really updating the present. I don't necessarily know. But because of this, it opens up the possibilities for something like Luke 5:13 or Leviticus 5:13, and possibly the one with no real bearing on the actual tattoo, Lamentations 5:13. But either way, it might play some degree of role, and I mean, it's up to you if you want to take meaning from any of one of those scriptures. But I do feel that Matthew 5:13 is extremely fitting for her character. Now, next to the 13, it does look like it's a representation of like brass knuckles, which might mean, defense, or, willing to defend yourself, that kind of thing. And then the diamond next to it with the 4 holes in it. When you look at it, the tattoo on her actual neck, it looks more like a diamond with a cross in it. This image tends to note something like a 4 of diamonds with, maybe with like bullet holes in it. So I'm not entirely sure. There could be some reference there, but that part of the tattoo I couldn't quite figure out. So that's the one piece there that I'm kind of a little bit hesitant to even talk about, just because I don't know what that part means, but I'm pretty sure that the other part is brass knuckles. But from here, things still get more interesting. All right, so we've got the Matthew 5:13 salt of the earth reference. We have the we all come from the sea reference. Obviously, that kind of ties in. Salt comes from the sea. That kind of fits. And then, of course, we see this tie-in with just Judy herself having all these nautical references, just, everything related back to her history. And we see this with Pyramid Song, not only with the mission, but with the tattoo that she has on her arm. Now, there's actually two interesting lines from this song. The first one being the one that we know, nothing to fear, nothing to doubt. But the second reference is actually to Black-Eyed Angels. Now, in the lyrics it says, black-eyed angels swam with me. And from the song, what we do kind of understand is that, at least from the symbolism presented in the music video, if you've ever seen it, which kind of ties into one theme. All right, so black-eyed angels, swimming with a person generally represents, like disaster or impending doom or even death. Nothing to fear, nothing to doubt is generally a reference towards, accepting death or, just death in general. So we can see that from her Pyramid Song tattoos that there is a strong inclination towards the idea of death as a whole. What's interesting about this tattoo is because it is directly under the number 13. What I can say for sure is that 13 might possibly represent M. M is the 13th letter of the English alphabet. So 13 could be another way of representing the Mox. But because of its relation to Pyramid Song, 13 could also represent death. And the reason this is interesting is because the game does have some sort of spiritualism presented to it, right? It's not the modern, it's not the modern religious definition of spiritualism, but there is an overarching tie between astronomy, tarot, and the zodiac. All these little layers seem to affect some of the characters. I think, when this game was originally being developed, I think it had a much more important role. Obviously, for V, our relation with Misty is completely, based around the tarot cards. But I think it had a lot more impact on just all of the characters in the game than we currently see. And I think a lot of these leftovers are actually part of Judy's character. And that makes it, rather interesting because, they didn't seem to cut out all of this stuff related to her, and you can still kind of see some of these pieces. Now, you look at the tarot, and you might not really think anything of it. I mean, obviously, they give a general description. They don't really go into it too much in detail. They don't really, give readings to the other characters. But, like I already said, the Pyramid Song reference to nothing to fear, nothing to doubt, the black-eyed angels representing death, and obviously she has the black-eyed angel tattoo on her back. You can see the eyes are blacked out, representing possibly a demon, a death, demon, that kind of thing. Nothing to fear, nothing to doubt, again being a reference to possible death. The 13 tattoo above it, might represent M, but it might also represent the 13th tarot card. If you just entered into Google search the 13th tarot card, well then you're going to find death. So this leads me to believe even more that she is tied into a lot of this like pseudo-spirituality in the game that is kind of being presented to all the characters. The most important thing about death is if you actually read the card. Death is the card of becoming. It signifies an inherent and difficult transition, the conclusion of one phase of life and the beginning of another. Inevitably, something gets lost during the transformation, but something else will rise to take its place. In pretty much every ending that I've seen from Judy, she has a reference to something very similar to the death card. What we end up seeing is basically her talking about, how things didn't really go well for her, how she was always transitioning from one phase to another. She kind of marks time and stages, and we see this. What she's talking about is, she's had the hole-in-the-wall phase, she's had the group home phase, she's had the Mox phase, and of course we know that, depending on the ending, she's either moving away from the Night City phase, or she's going into, the V phase. There's just so many different references here, and it ties in so well with her character that it's just, it just fits, like you just can't see anything but it after you see it. This is why I had so much fun actually trying to figure out these things, because there are these connections that are really well done. But I haven't even covered one of the most interesting aspects of this. Now, she does have a hidden tattoo. Obviously, she has two hidden tattoos. And this one you can only see in two methods. One, you actually succeed in romancing Judy, or look up her 3D rendered image on the internet. If you don't do that, you can't see this tattoo. But this tattoo has a lot more tie-ins to other things in the game that I think needs its own video for. So I want to thank you for watching this video, and hopefully you'll join me for the second part of this video. But I just want to say thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.